This is Love Notes, daily devotions from Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. Grace and peace to you. Our texts today are from the book of Isaiah. Toward the beginning, chapter 6, verses 6 through 8, and toward the end, chapter 53, verses 3 through 6. The reason this is an essential text, and really the whole of Isaiah is an essential text, is because it is obvious from the way Jesus quotes and uses the book of Isaiah in his own ministry that Isaiah formed his understanding of his own mission and formed his understanding of how the world would work and what God was doing in it. If we are to understand Jesus, the book of Isaiah is a way of doing that. The book of Isaiah comes to us as one book, but it's really three parts. First Isaiah, if you will, the first part of it is written by the man named Isaiah, we think. He was a priest who served in Jerusalem before the time of exile and the destruction of Jerusalem. Tradition has it that he was killed in the process of the exile at some point along the way. The second part of the book is written when the people are in Babylon by a disciple of Isaiah's who continues the prophetic work. And the third part, toward the end, is written as the people return back home and try to rebuild. It's all Isaiah, and it's all informative. Our first section of text today is from the call of Isaiah in the 6th chapter. Isaiah has a vision. He is a priest, and so he's in the temple where he does his work, a familiar place, and he sees God in the temple, except God doesn't fit. By which I mean that the hem of God's cloak fills the whole temple. God is too big for the temple, or the temple's too small for God. God is so mighty and powerful and beyond imagination that God cannot be contained. God can't be contained by our rules, our regulations, our worship places, or anything else that our imagination might produce. God fills the temple, and Isaiah drops to the floor and hides his face for fear of being destroyed. God is surrounded by seraphs, attendants, winged attendants around the throne of God. And one of the seraphs flew to Isaiah, holding a live coal that had been taken from the altar. Using a pair of tongs, the coal is reached out and it touches Isaiah's lips. And the seraph says, "Now that this has touched your lips, your guilt is departed and your sin is blotted out." Isaiah receives forgiveness. He is made holy in the presence of the holy. We sometimes don't think that we really need to confess and receive forgiveness. But Isaiah reminds us in this vision that to come into the presence of God is to come into the presence of something that is wholly other than us, something that is beyond our imagination, and something that could just as easily destroy us. It is forgiveness and acceptance by God that makes us pure and clean to stand in the eyes of God. Nothing we do ourselves. It is the seraph who brings the coal. It is God's command that makes it happen. Isaiah receives this gift and stands up on his own 2 feet. And after this happens, he hears a voice that says, "Whom shall I send? Who will go for us? Who will declare my words so that the people can hear?" And Isaiah finds himself saying, "Here am I, send me." In the second part of the text, we have material from what's called the suffering servant songs. These were very important to Jesus' understanding of himself and his ministry. It begins, "He was despised and rejected by others, a man of suffering and acquainted with infirmity, And as one from whom others hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him of no account. Does it sound familiar? It is Jesus himself. This is a promise from the prophet of this part of Isaiah, that there will come one day sent by God who will bear the sins and the infirmities and the suffering of the world upon himself, so that the people might be redeemed and reestablished as the holy people of God. It is full of promise and hope. It is full of love and grace. Verse 4 says, "Surely this servant has borne our infirmities, carried our diseases, yet we accounted him stricken, struck down by God, and afflicted." In other words, this servant will bear in his own body the consequences that we should bear. He will bear in his own body everything that we suffer in this world. Not because he deserves it, but because it is the lot of human life. And that sounds like Jesus too. He was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the punishment that made us whole, and by his bruises we will be healed. You see, in Jesus, as he suffers the crucifixion and bears the marks of suffering and evil in his own body, the resurrection then brings healing to him and to all of us. And then the prophet says, "All we like sheep have gone astray. We've turned our own way. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all." We turned our back on God. We crucified God. And the Lord has laid on this servant the iniquity of us all, so that it can be forgiven and raised up. As Christians, we see Jesus in these texts, and so they are essential to our understanding of who Jesus thought he was and who Jesus is for us. This is an essential text because it gives us an image and picture of what Jesus was up to on the cross and why it is important for us to be cleansed by the act of God. Amen.